Hey, so welcome back to remote learning. This was going to be done today, Wednesday, but we're starting to look at the factors that affects our cardiovascular system. So the cardiovascular being the veins, the arteries, the heart, all that sort of stuff. Okay, it's nothing to do with the respiratory system. That's something completely different. We'll just focus on the heart and the veins and the blood and that sort of stuff at this point in time. So we have our heart there. It's obviously a pretty important organ. You should be, sorry, I'm just itching my foot. I'm not trying to give you a close up of my bald head. We should be looking after it as best we can. Lifestyle choices can often affect how long it's going to work for. People that make poor lifestyle choices often end up with illnesses relating to either the heart, the lungs, maybe it's just the body in general. Some of the chronic diseases are listed there. We've got diabetes, osteoporosis, arteriosclerosis, chronic pulmonary obstructive I can't say it today, obstructive disease, which we will look at a little bit later on, arthritis, cancer, hypertension. So I've got my little helper beside me. So they're just some of the illnesses that people will experience as a result of making poor choices. So let's look at cardiovascular diseases. We'll start off with them. Just for the record, this is in your textbook, page 100, starts at page 129. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at hypertension, arteriosclerosis, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and stroke. So they're the ones that we're going to look at in this video. Okay. Obviously, all of these diseases that we've just listed have an impact on the mortality and the morbidity rates in Australia. So mortality being number of deaths and morbidity relating to illnesses. So those of you that are doing health ed, you should be familiar with both of those terms. So let's do this. Atherosclerosis. The arteries in the body. We know that they're elastic. We know that when the blood leaves the heart, when it's ejected from the heart, it's under a massive amount of pressure, and the arteries need to be elastic in order to cope with this pressure. But what happens is, over time, your arteries, and this is obviously diet dependent too, but over time your arteries will harden, they will become less elastic. Arteriosclerosis is what happens, or is the term that's given to when the arteries become harder and less elastic. And what actually happens is that because the arteries have hardened, because they might have also narrowed, the blood flow is reduced to the organs and to the tissues. And if you get a blockage, that's when you end up with, heart attacks and those sort of things, depending on which artery gets blocked. Atherosclerosis, it's a different type of arteriosclerosis. It's characterized by the buildup of plaque. So kind of like the stuff that you get on your teeth, that furry feeling that you get on your teeth, except it's a bit different. It's the buildup of fats, cholesterol, and other substances. And in terms of other substances, we're talking about white blood cells inside within the walls of the arteries. So instead of having your typically healthy artery that looks something like this, okay, and we've got the inside wall of it there. Okay, that's a really terrible circle, but that's a healthy one. Okay, there's no obstructions. But what happens with atherosclerosis is you get the buildup of these, fatty deposits and the inside of the wall, and all this area here. Do you know what? I better not draw on it because I'll ruin it, and then it won't make any sense. But all this in the inside is obviously attached to that red wall, and then the amount of, or the space for the blood is just this small section here. So it doesn't take much to block an artery in that instance. So, these will, all that stuff building up is going to result in a decrease in blood flow. And if one of those pieces of plaque breaks off, then that's potentially, where you end up with a blockage, and quite possibly a life-threatening blockage. So moving on, the causes. So high-fat diets, high blood pressure, smoking, these are all, pretty common examples of common causes of atherosclerosis. I'm struggling to say it tonight. So as it gets worse, they continually build up. So you remember the drawing there, we had our healthy artery. Well, this is that plaque that I was talking about. I mean, this is only a computer animation, but you can see that it has quite dramatically reduced the size of the artery. So a healthy artery would be, where my little laser pointer is going, but then we've got this blockage here. So it's not good to have that sort of thing. Cholesterols. There's different types of cholesterols that result in these blockages. You've got good cholesterols, which help break down some of the bad ones. Okay, you've got your high density lipoprotein, and then you've got your low density lipoprotein. So basically what happens is the HDL proteins, they flow through the arteries and they attract and they remove the low density ones and send it off to the liver. The liver does its thing and gets rid of it. Okay, but eventually what happens is it's those low density ones that they harden and they form that plaque on the walls. So you need to have a balance between the two. Well, you don't need to have a balance between the two, but obviously there are some cholesterols that are more beneficial to have in your diet. So now we're going to look at the good and the bad fats. So this is where we find HDLs and the LDLs. Okay, so typically LDLs are found in, your saturated fats. Okay, they turn solid at room temperature. So, your butter, your cream, your full cream milk, and then you've got your meat as well with all the stuff on the outside of the meat. Processed meats like salami, they have a really high fat content. Oil, deep fried foods, lots of cakes, biscuits, basically all the good stuff in life is really bad for you, that's not cool. Okay, but your good the HDLs are often found in your monounsaturated fats, your polyunsaturated fats, and it's found in your fish and your nuts and your seeds and all the boring kind of foods that, well, I don't eat too many of those. I eat beans and whole grains and some fruit, but I don't. Fish is just nasty. Nuts, horrible. Avocado, that's just revolting. Sorry, anyone out there that likes avocado, it's horrible. Soy, no, don't do soy. I'm going to be one of those people that dies from why can't I say it? No, I'm not even going to go there. It's 11 o'clock at night. Leave me alone. You try and say it. Go on. So, anyway, HDL, LDL. Cardiorespiratory system, just in case you're wondering what CRS is. So these are the types of diseases and illnesses associated. So if we're looking at the cardio system, we have coronary heart disease, we have hypertension, we have stroke. In the respiratory system, we have chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD, which we'll look at, and asthma. So coronary heart disease. So your heart is a muscle. Okay, it needs a constant supply of blood. It needs a constant supply of oxygen. So what we're talking about with the coronary heart disease is these muscles, these arteries and veins here, okay, if you get a blockage in any one of those, this is where you get your heart attacks from. Okay, I really wanted to do a prac with you where we got to look at the actual heart and you could see those arteries and that sort of thing. That's not going to happen at this point in time, but if you feel so inclined, and mum and dad are, feeling super nice and in their 1 hour or whatever it is, shopping allowance under the stage 4 restrictions, maybe they would like to pick you up a heart that you can, cut open and have a bit of a look at, because it is interesting to look at. Well, I thought it was when I was doing anatomy at uni, but you can actually see the coronary arteries, and you can open it up and have a look at the ventricles and the artery, the atria, and it is actually quite interesting to look at. But the trouble is, when we get a blockage in one of those arteries, any one of those little bits of plaque can break off. That's when we have, trouble. Okay, and that's when heart attacks result, because the heart isn't getting that supply of blood and oxygen that it needs. So, like I already said, it occurs when the buildup of fatty deposits reduces the blood flow through the arteries to the heart itself. Okay, the more obstructed, the greater the impact on the heart, and usually it manifests as chest pain, which is called angina, and in serious instances, a heart attack. You've got to already know. It's not coronavirus. Why did I put a bus? You're probably wondering that, especially one of the buses that's not even relevant to us. So it's in your textbook. I don't have your textbook in front of me. I don't know why I don't. I've got the year 12 ones. Basically what they did years and years ago was around the I think it was 1950s, they did a little science experiment, and they wanted to see the impact on, because these buses, they have conductors, and these conductors, they were on their feet constantly, they were walking up and down and cutting laps of the bus constantly. They basically wanted to see if there was any sort of difference in the levels of heart disease between the conductors and then the bus drivers. Obviously, the bus drivers sat on their backsides for quite an extended period of time. So, it was found that as a result of, their job role, that the conductors did have a significantly less risk of developing, coronary heart disease and all those sort of sedentary-based illnesses, because of what they were doing. They were walking constantly, they were on their feet, they were moving up and down the stairs, they were exerting. So it was showing the benefits of physical activity even back in the 1950s. So it's been known for quite some time that leading that sedentary lifestyle isn't isn't good for people. We need to be out there and active. So hypertension, often commonly referred to as high blood pressure. Okay, there is no one single obvious cause for it, but there are multiple factors. Smoking, being overweight or obese, okay, drinking excessively, leading a sedentary lifestyle, perhaps you've got a family history of it. I know when I go to the doctors and they're taking a medical history or anything like that, often, I will be asked, is there anything that we need to be aware of? Any sort of family history? Oh yeah, my old man's got high blood pressure. His father had, my grandfather had high blood pressure. So, there is obviously that genetics. It's in the family genetics. So potentially there is the risk that I may develop high blood pressure later on down the track if I don't, maintain a sufficiently active lifestyle. So again, another prac that I wanted to do with you guys. No, we did do this. So normal blood pressure is anything sort of 120 over 80. High blood pressure is considered anything that is over 140 over 90. So remember, that the you've got the 120 is the systolic, and the 80 is the diastolic. So systole is when the heart is contracting, so when it's squeezing the blood out, and then diastole is when it's relaxing and filling back up again. Okay, so the blood pressure, it's the measurement of the force applied to those artery walls. So if it gets too high, then yes, you are, you're at risk of some pretty bad things. Okay, chapter check. What I want you to do is I want you to complete questions 1 and 2 on page 134. Why am I even looking at the Year 12 textbook? I'm looking at that, going to give you a page reference. Get that out of the way. Questions 1 and 2 on page 134, and then come back and keep going with the video. Look at that, I even gave you the questions. I forgot I did that. Questions 1 and 2. How does being overweight contribute to hypertension, and when arteries supplying the heart itself are badly blocked, a heart attack may result, blah, 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 blah. You can read and do that yourselves. You don't need me to do it for you. Am I going to give you the answers? Yes, I did. So in answer to question number 1, being overweight contributes to hypertension or high blood pressure by having a high fat content, puts more strain on the heart as the arteries become thicker, and then the heart has to work harder to pump the blood around the body. So that was the answer to question 1. To increase blood flow and reduce the chance of a heart attack, they will either insert a stent to open up the affected artery or perform bypass surgery. So basically what happens is, it's like, how can we explain it? Think of it like putting a straw within the artery. Not a straw, obviously, but that's effectively what they're doing. They're putting a material like a mesh or something that is designed to take the artery from, this sort of thing to back to a normal, and I can't get it right, back to a normal size artery. So we're going from this to this by putting something like a straw in. So pregnancy is also going to result in an increase in blood pressure because the heart has another litre of blood to circulate around the body. Where's this other litre of blood coming from, you say? Because you've got another little being growing inside you that has blood in it too. Mum, baby, they're both connected via the oh Jesus, well, I'm having a mental blank now. Umbilical cord. Gee, I can't believe I forgot that. Anyway, I've had 4 kids actually, and I've forgotten. That's terrible. And I'm a health teacher. So connected by the umbilical cord, the blood is circulated and filtered and done. Everything is, and nutrients are fed through that cord. So yes, there's going to be more blood flowing around in that body. So that's why there's going to be an increase in blood pressure. Moving on, looking at stroke. I'm sure you've heard the acronym FAST. So has their face drooped? Can they lift their arms? Has their speech been slurred? Or, are they, do they understand you? And then calling 000 because time is, of the essence. It's not something that you want to muck around with. So it occurs when the blood supply is interrupted to the brain. So essentially it's like a heart attack, but for the brain. Okay, so there's a blockage in the brain. The brain also needs blood to survive. So it leads to temporary or possibly permanent disability or paralysis, and it can even lead to death in quite a few instances. So the more time between the symptoms appearing and receiving medical treatment, obviously it puts the person at greater risk of disability, paralysis, or even death. So the quicker that you can get help to the person, the more positive the results, let's go with that, will hopefully be. So moving on to a snapshot of our health. Currently, and I say currently, this was the most accurate data we had at the time, but 1 in 5 adults, approximately 20%, or 3.7 million people in 2012 had cardiovascular disease based on self-reported data. Okay, so that's quite high. It was not that long ago. I don't know where we rank currently, but we were the fattest nation. We'd overtaken America, and we were a larger nation. So you can see there from the graph too, coronary heart disease, way out in front in terms of like the hospitalizations of people. And males are just almost, I'd say, in fact, more than double the females. It's not good when you consider how easy it is to avoid these sort of things. And often cardiovascular disease hospitalization rates are higher for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders because they don't have access to, all the nutritious food. They might have just your junky foods, your high fat content foods. They don't have the education, so they don't know about eating right and the correct diet and that sort of thing too. So, doesn't paint a very pretty picture. Okay, so respiratory disease. Let's look at a few of those now. So obviously we've gone from dealing with the heart and the arteries and the veins. We're now moving on to the lungs and the trachea, the bronchioles. So you can have two types. You can have acute, which is, we've done this acute and chronic. So acute is that one that's like that, it's straight away, and then you've got your chronic, which are long term. So these were the most common problems encountered by GPs. So 1 in 5 people between 2004 and 2014, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease is a leading cause of death both in Australia and internationally. So what is COPD? So chronic obstructive pulmonary disease is a long-term disease. It mainly affects older people, and it covers those diseases like emphysema and the chronic bronchitis. So bronchitis, you're getting all the mucus and nasty stuff building up on your lungs. Then you've got asthma as well, which is the inflammation in the airways. So it's that restricting again of the airways, and the breath doesn't get through because the buildup of mucus and the not the thickening, but basically the tightening of the airway. So it's really, really hard for the person to breathe. Asthma, 5 times more common than chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, but they are both still quite dangerous. Okay, enough talking from me. What I wanted you to do was read page 138 and 140. It says in groups, but well, sorry guys, you're just going to have to do it on your own. Summarize each of the headings: COPD, asthma, and how much activity. Okay, and just create a summary. Don't worry about reporting back because there's nobody to report back to except for me. And once you've done that, you can go on and do all the chapter questions on page 141. Aren't I nice? You love me so much. No, you don't. All right. See you soon, guys.